This is the second in a series of 8 lessons on the PMA Science of Success system, and tonight's lesson is entitled The Mastermind. The purpose of the PMA Science of Success system is to make us think. To make us think, you say, why? I spend most of my time thinking. Well, perhaps to make us think in new ways and from a different perspective. Any person who wishes to demonstrate happiness, success, prosperity, and peace of mind at a level that's beyond what they have experienced prior to this moment can only do so as a result of rearranging their thought process. Napoleon Hill used to emphasize that most people do not know how to think. To think is quite different from to remember. So often when we think we are thinking, we are only remembering what we thought at some other time. And usually when we think we're remembering what we have decided upon at some former time, all that we're doing is remembering the concepts that were given to us by other persons, and so our thinking often does not represent our own thought process at all. Merely concepts, ideas that we have accepted as being valid or true without thinking them through for ourselves. To think is also quite different from having fixed opinions. Often, when we think we're thinking, all that we're redoing is rehashing our fixed opinions, responding to a particular situation from our old ideas, from our limited, self-defeating concepts and emotional responses. And so it is true, I believe, that we have not yet learned how to think. And that's what the success system is all about, giving us a new understanding of how our minds work and giving us some dynamite techniques with which we can work with the thought process that will guarantee a new experience on this planet for any person who wishes to practice these principles in all of their affairs. Let's take a moment to think about thinking. And I would share with you one of my favorite conceptual statements about mind. Since the subject of our lesson tonight is the mastermind, mind, the master power that molds and makes. And man is mind. Evermore he takes the tools of thought and shaping what he wills brings forth 1,000 joys or 1,000 ills. He thinks in secret, but it comes to pass. Environment is but his looking glass. That, my friends, is an amazing statement. Are you aware that there is not 1% of the people who live on this planet that have come to believe, to accept, and to understand that their thoughts shape their lives? Far more than 99% of the people who live around us believe that their lives are shaped by external forces, by circumstances, by the accident of their birth, by conditions over which they have no control, by persons other than themselves. Most people have many powers, never realizing and certainly never having the opportunity to demonstrate the greatest of all truths, and that is that what we think, that our own belief system is the only determining factor in the quality of our lives and in the nature of the experience that we will have. That any person can reshape their world almost immediately by beginning to reshape their concepts, their thinking. This is so remarkable because it is true. It is the truth. And shaping what he wills brings forth 1,000 joys, 1,000 ills. You see, we have always thought that no one knew what we were thinking. How could you know what I'm thinking? Oh, but you can. Maybe you cannot detect each specific thought or each emotional response, but you can tell the quality of my thinking by examining my life, my responses to life and to you. What we think is what we are. In presenting this lesson, I want to make it clear that the mastermind principle is the hub or the axis of the entire PMA Science of Success philosophy. The mastermind principle is the principle which makes it possible for an individual, through association with others, to acquire and to utilize all the knowledge needed for the attainment of any desired goal in life. The mastermind principle, simply stated, is an alliance of two or more minds working together in perfect harmony to obtain a definite objective. It's interesting to note that no one has ever attained outstanding success in any calling in the upper brackets of life without applying the mastermind principle. And this is because no one mind is complete by itself. When you hear that song that many of us enjoy so much, I did it my way. Forget it. It never worked that way. Oh, yes, while it is true, and I just told you that I am a self-determining entity, each of us is, and that only by shaping our thinking can we shape our lives, it's important to know that of myself and by myself I cannot become, I cannot experience, I cannot do, I cannot achieve the things that I desire. Because by myself I am not complete. And this is the first step that one must take in the reduction of the ego. See, we have wanted to believe that we really could do it by ourselves, perhaps with a little help along the way. Not very much, a little. And to really begin to understand the mastermind principle, you accept the fact that of yourself and by yourself, it can't happen. All truly great minds have been reinforced through contact with other minds. All of us need the association of other like-minded, growing persons if we're going to expand in understanding and if we're going to change the world in which we find ourselves living. The very greatest minds are the result of deliberate understanding and use of this mastermind principle, which may be one reason why there are but few truly great minds in the world. And I would remind you again, the mastermind principle is a practical medium through which you may approach the use of the full benefits of the experience, the training, the education, the specialized knowledge and native intelligence of other people as completely as if those qualities were your own, plus the fact that by practicing the mastermind principle, you will be able to directly contact, to plug your own mind into and begin to absorb the power and the intelligence of the mastermind or infinite intelligence. And I can tell you that if you will carry out the instructions that you will receive in the lesson tonight and the other 7 lessons that you will be given in this series of cassettes, you will be halfway to your goal before you even recognize what that goal is. In time, of course, you must be able to come up with your definite major purpose in life. But the moment that you begin to move toward the change that your heart desires, you're halfway there. That is the single most important step. Now, so that you may better understand the intangible potentialities of power available to you through a properly chosen mastermind group, let's talk about two characteristics of the mastermind principle, one of which is the economic principle, and the other is the psychic or the spiritual aspect of the mastermind principle. The economic feature is obvious. The advantages that may be created by any person who surrounds himself with the advice, the counsel, the personal cooperation of a group of like-minded persons who are willing to lend him or her wholehearted aid in a spirit of harmony is so obvious. This form of cooperative alliance has been the basis of nearly every great fortune that has ever developed on this planet. Now, it's possible to acquire a fortune by inheritance, but if you don't understand the mastermind principle, the chances are it'll go right through your fingers. Nothing great, according to Napoleon Hill, as the result of interviewing more than 500 of the most successful men and women of all time, nothing great has ever been achieved and maintained without an understanding and the conscious practice of the mastermind principle. The psychic or spiritual phase of the mastermind principle is much more difficult to comprehend. You may catch a significant suggestion from this statement. No two minds ever come together without thereby creating a third invisible, intangible force which may be likened to a third mind. I would change that statement a bit. I would say it this way. No two minds ever come together without thereby contacting a third mind that is greater than either or both of them combined. And of course, we're talking about the universal mind of infinite intelligence, where two or more of us come together in a spirit of perfect harmony. We in that moment contact a power that is greater than ourselves. A mastermind alliance, properly conducted, stimulates each of the persons who are involved in that mastermind group to begin to move into action with enthusiasm and a newly formed sense of personal initiative and imagination. You will discover when you become involved with your mastermind group that your creative imagination will begin to come alive. You will see possibilities that you did not see before. And you will discover that this alliance will accelerate the capacity of your mind to receive and transmit thought vibrations through telepathy from other persons as well as through your own intuition. The mastermind principle, when properly experienced, gives each member full access to the universal spiritual powers as well as the subconscious minds of all the other members of that alliance, and in so doing makes available the limitless resources of the thought energy of the group and of the power that is back of the group. It is impossible for me to emphasize too strongly that we have at our fingertips the capacity to absorb power directly from the great universal storehouse of infinite intelligence. Everything that you need to know in your life, as long as you live, is available to you. All of the energy that you will ever need to do the things that need to be done by you is available to you. Is that a statement that's too much to believe? It's true. The power that has formed us and that has shaped us has given us a very simple system of ideas that, when practiced, will permit that very same power to work its powerful influence in each of our lives in ways that are so dramatic that they really do transform us and transform our world. There is an infinite storehouse of ideas, of knowledge, and of power. That's not a new thought, because most of the great thinkers of all ages have believed that man's stored information is not limited to his own memories of past experiences and learned facts. You see, we're not just plugging into the accumulated knowledge of the human race, although that knowledge is available to us. Emerson said, there's one mind common to all individual persons. And he compared our individual minds to the inlets in an ocean of universal intelligence. He said that your mind was an individualized expression of the higher mind. It was like a small inlet, a bay that was supplied by the ocean. Edison believed that he got some of his ideas from a source outside himself, and once when he was complimented for a particularly creative idea, he disclaimed credit and he said, ideas are in the air. And if I had not discovered it, someone else would have. And it's true. Some of the greatest discoveries that have come to the human race have been revealed to different persons in different quarters of the world almost simultaneously. You've heard the expression that the most powerful thing on earth is an idea whose time has come. It's true. It really is true. But ideas or new understanding, new wisdom comes into the minds of those people who have prepared themselves to receive a new understanding. And the way that you prepare yourself is to become willing to be changed, to become willing to have something new and dramatic happen in your life, to become willing and excited about change. A person who is satisfied with themselves the way they are and who likes their world the way it is formed is not open to change. Would you agree? Nor is a person who is still caught up in the blaming of other people for the conditions that exist in their lives. It might be possible for a person to be going through grave problems, believing, pretending to themselves that their problems are not really of their own making, blaming and accusing other persons, justifying themselves. That person is not open to the ideas that can come to him or her from infinite intelligence. But when you're ready to be changed, something wonderful can happen. As a matter of fact, it is already in the process of happening. Schubert is said to have told a friend that his own creative process consisted in, quote, remembering a melody that neither he nor anyone else had ever thought of before. Some of his great music he wrote simply by remembering what he had not thought of before. Amadeus Mozart did the same thing. If you saw the movie of his life, you saw that account, how he wrote music in his mind, or rather it was written in his mind, and then he remembered it and only wrote it out on paper. Karen, who is the composer that wrote the great marches? John Philip Sousa. I see some of your feet are moving just when I mention his name, John Philip Sousa. Do you know that he had that same ability? That some of his most dynamic music he did not write. It wrote itself in his mind. This is not new wisdom at all. It's possible for any human being who lives on this planet to become equally receptive to the wisdom and power that that person needs to reshape their own world, their own destiny. And that's what we're talking about in this lesson, the mastermind principle. I repeat, it's a matter of established record that all individual successes based upon any kind of achievement above mediocrity are attained only through an understanding of the mastermind principle. Napoleon Hill as I indicated to you in the first lesson, in his career was a friend and advisor to presidents, one of which was Franklin Delano Roosevelt, early on in Mr. Roosevelt's first administration. And Napoleon Hill tells a story, or tells the story of the presidency and of the nation at that time. And rather than telling the story, I think I would like to read to you in Mr. Hill's own words. One of the finest examples I can call to your attention was that of Franklin D. Roosevelt when he was first elected to the presidency in 1933. I mean the method which he used to induce the American people to supplant fear with faith. I had the privilege of sitting in on this and studying it very carefully. I watched everything that happened, and I assisted in building one of the most outstanding mastermind alliances this country has ever known. I'll tell you what that consisted of and how it operated. Now notice that Mr. Hill tells us that he helped to form that mastermind alliance that turned this country around in the Depression of the 1930s. When Mr. Roosevelt went into office the first time, the people of the country were in a state of fear, a veritable stampede of fear, selling their property, stocks, bonds, and everything they had for whatever they could get for them. Generally speaking, it was a mastermind alliance of the people of the United States that was running in reverse gear. That's actually what it amounted to, a mastermind alliance based on fear and racing downhill backwards. Mr. Roosevelt stepped in, and here I want to say that what I'm about to tell you has no political implications whatsoever. But if there was ever a man suited to take over at that particular time, he was the man. He had the necessary qualifications and the temperament to change the minds of the people and start them thinking in terms of achievement and recovery instead of panic and depression. And have you noticed in your own study of history over the years that there are certain times in the history of the world and of certain nations that the right person happens to be on the scene at the right time, and that person steps forward as if by chance? Could it be that it's not by chance at all, but that there is a power and an intelligence that is bringing into the expression of the people at that time a person with understanding? Through an understanding of human nature and the power potential of this principle of the mastermind, Mr. Roosevelt went systematically to work to turn the tide of fear and replace it with a flood of sustained faith. Here are the highlights of how that huge mastermind was organized. I doubt if very many people realize what was actually responsible for the changes which began to take place almost overnight when the thinking was switched from negative to positive. As I read this story to you, I want you to hear along the way the principles that are involved when the thinking of the nation was switched from negative to positive. Have you noticed in your own life what happens when your thinking is switched from negative to positive, or in some moments when it switched from positive to negative? You went downhill backwards in a hurry? Sometimes we can understand a principle when we look at its opposite form. First, both houses of Congress worked together in harmony for the first time in a generation. Under the magnetic personality of the new president who inspired their confidence, a majority of the members of Congress forgot momentarily their narrow party lines and petty selfish interests and put their collective shoulders to the wheel to pull the nation out of the sloughs of stagnation. Second, the great majority of the newspaper publishers of the nation were called together in a series of conferences and asked to replace the scare headlines that they were using to stimulate hysteria and fear with headlines which would show some hope and promise and the possibility of a brighter future for America. Instead of playing up business failures, they were asked to accent business successes. Human interest stories were to point up those who had remained valiant and had kept their heads above water. Here again, we're looking at the power of the press and other influences to determine how an individual or a nation thinks. And this mastermind alliance went to the newspapers and said, hey, wait a minute. Let's utilize this great media to feed some positive thoughts and feelings and concepts into the mind of this nation. Third, the operators of radio stations were called in and asked if they would go along and have their commentators and news editors say something pleasing once in a while, instead of continually painting the dark, gloomier aspect of the shape of events. You know, as I pointed out in the lesson on definiteness of purpose, the mass thinking of humanity is negative. For some reason, not entirely clear, the average person loves misery and trouble, poverty and want, disaster and peril. Now, you've never had any trouble with those things in your life, have you? A little bit? A whole lot? Well, the newspapers and the radio changed what they were projecting. And it was about that time that good old Gabriel Heater, the well-known radio commentator, came along with his "There's good news tonight," and that's what we were after. And it had a telling effect on public feeling. The moment we began to visualize the change and to feel the change as a nation, it began to happen. We began to create the actual conditions or circumstances of change. You see, these principles work for one person, two people, 100, 1,000, 1,000,000. But the more minds that are involved, the more power. And the more minds that are involved negatively, the more power. And President Roosevelt had an understanding of this through his own mastermind alliance that was formed and brought the focus of that information to bear. Fourth, all religious groups got behind the movement and worked together regardless of denominations. Fifth, the leaders of both major political parties got behind the administration. And Napoleon Hill points out that our political system is run by just a few people in control. And by getting that relatively small handful of people joining together in a spirit of harmony for a period of time, it was amazing what began to happen. Sixth and last, but not least, a great majority of the people of all political and religious leanings got behind the president. And so it was the whole nation that really came in with the fullness of the power that was there. And the result of using those 6 influences, which I have enumerated, Mr. Hill said, did the trick and generated the power needed at that time of national crises. It's no different in your individual life or mine. You can turn your life around at any time that you desire by practicing these principles. And not just turn it around, you can become a peak performer. All peak performers are masterminders. They're working together in a spirit of harmony with other like-minded persons to achieve common goals, working toward their definite major purpose, supporting each other, believing in each other, and also believing in something that's greater than themselves. Another illustration that Mr. Hill gave was the power of Andrew Carnegie's mastermind group. He said that Mr. Carnegie understood more about the mastermind principle than any human being that he ever met. And he gave as one example the fact that Mr. Carnegie did not know anything about making or distributing or selling steel and didn't pretend to do so. But what he did was to gather together an organization of men who in their combined knowledge knew all that was known at that time about steel. How to make it, what to do with it when it was made, how to sell it. He saw that as long as steel was $140 a ton, and that was more than a generation ago, its use would be prohibitive. And so he envisioned the price of $25 a ton, which was unthinkable. Actually, he brought it down to $20 a ton. And in so doing, he became the father of the steel age, which was destined to change the appearance of every city in the world of any importance and to affect the lives of men and women all over the world for all time. And as a part of that process, Mr. Carnegie once made up his mind that he wanted the best trained chief chemist in the world. And he sent out his men to comb the world to find that person. And he finally found him in the great Krupp Steel Works in Germany. Now, if you're looking for something and believe that you will find it, you will find it. I don't care whether it's a needle in a haystack an idea that you need, whatever it is that you need, if you know that it exists, and if you go looking for it, having set a definite goal, believing that you are connected with infinite intelligence, you will find it. And he found this man. He entered into a contract with him on a 5-year basis with a rather large salary for that time. And you know that before the end of the first year, he paid him in full and fired him? And the reason was that this man was so temperamental, so negative. He knew more than anybody else about the chemistry of steel. But Mr. Carnegie said that this man's mental attitude, if you turned him loose in a factory of 1,000 people, that he would discolor their minds without having spoken one word. Well, you and I know several people like him. Is that true? Don't tell me that you have not had and do not have one or more people in your life who discolor your world regularly. And sometimes they don't have to say a word. They just look at you. True? Do you know that when this happens, they do so with your permission? You can fire them anytime you want to. Mr. Carnegie said, do not live your life with even one person who walks into it on a regular basis and discolors it. And Napoleon Hill, as a result of that lesson, developed a technique wherein that he regularly closed his mind or shut off the negative emotions or responses from other people. And you and I think it's very important that you and I, as a part of the mastermind principle, begin to understand that this is an essential step for us. If I'm going to give up my own negative thinking, why should I accept the negativity of other persons? No. Your mental attitude determines your success or failure. Is that true? Then the quality of your emotional life is perhaps the pearl of great price. It is the greatest gift that you have. And remembering that this is so, it's important then to understand that with your mastermind partners, you must always come to them from a position of having a positive mental attitude. And this does not mean that you have to always be completely fixed when you walk into a meeting with your mastermind group, but you surely will not walk into that group of special people that you have collected around you and dump the garbage of your mind upon the table before them. If you do, what you will get back will be a tenfold return of negativity. You will get back what you give multiplied. So do you see how important it is? So before you enter into an experience with your own mastermind group, get your thinking straight. If you have to walk around the block, do it. Whatever you have to do to be sure that you're in a positive mental and emotional attitude. I would like to take a moment to share with you my experience with the mastermind principle. It began more than 30 years ago. I became aware of the fact that there was something working in my life other than myself at a time of great need. I had reached a turning point. I had reached the end of my rope, at least I thought. I was an extreme case of self-will run riot. And my life was a reflection of that self-will. So one day, in experiencing abject defeat, I did something that was very, very difficult for me to do. I asked for help. And I asked for help from an infinite intelligence that I did not believe existed. It was one of the most honest moments of my life because I said, if you don't exist, there's no hope for me. And I realized that. I knew that by myself I could not fix myself. I could not achieve what I wanted. And so I asked for help. And really what I asked for in this process, I asked to be changed, for my mindset, for my thoughts to be changed. I became willing to be changed at depth. And almost immediately something happened. First within me and then in the world around me, I found myself in the most incredible way drawing into my life people that were not there before, information that was not there before, understanding that was not there before. I found Napoleon Hill's book, Think and Grow Rich, and opened it. And as I began to read, I realized that I was reading the story of my life as it was unfolding at that time. And when I got to the chapter on the mastermind principle, it became apparent to me that this principle had been working in my life without me knowing it. But the moment I began to see it with my mind, I was able to make connections in different places and to understand that if the principle had been working so well without my understanding, how much better would it work if I began to consciously, even to deliberately practice it? And I began to do so, and I can tell you that in more than 30 years, I have never been without a mastermind alliance. I have had an ongoing mastermind group, not the same one over those years. They've changed, but always, not just a mastermind group of other like-minded persons with whom I meet regularly, but numerous other mastermind alliances that have been generated over that period of time. And I can tell you that it's been the single most important thing that has ever happened to me on this planet. The understanding of and the practicing of this principle. I have experienced incredible demonstrations as a result of being involved with masterminding. I mean subjective inside myself. Demonstrations that are so intangible that I could not prove them to you or perhaps even define them to you. But also demonstrations of a more tangible or real kind. The changing of my life in dramatic ways. Help coming when there seemed to be no help. Answers being provided. My definite major purpose being established for me again, and then a newly defined definite major purpose established again. My goals achieved 1,000 times, 1,000 times, 1,000 times in these years. More than that, I have had the personal experience of watching other people, scores of them, hundreds of them. And because of my own enthusiastic, as you can tell, involvement with the mastermind principle, I've been able to convince or to cause numerous other people around this country, many of whom are here tonight, to begin to believe in and to create their own mastermind alliance groups and to practice the principles therein. And I've watched your lives and their lives change as dramatically as my own. It is amazing. I can tell you that in all that time, I have never seen one person ever successfully reach the top by themselves. And I've been watching as carefully as I possibly can. Is it true? Is it really true that we can't get to the top by ourselves? And I believe that that is the way, that it really is. Over this period of time, I developed my own mastermind journal, and as you know, we have published them for the thousands. And in my journal, I keep an account of my daily, my weekly, monthly, and annual goals and objectives. Every mastermind meeting that I have, I write down my own mastermind requests and those requests of my partners, my mastermind partners. You see, I've come to understand that Together, we can believe things that would be impossible for any one of us to believe by ourselves. My mastermind group can believe for me things that I cannot believe for myself, but I can believe it for them also. But then by keeping my journal, I can daily, as I go through my time of meditation, I can return to those things that I am believing with and for my own mastermind partners. And it really does work. As a matter of fact, one of my mastermind partners called me today, early this morning, and told me of an experience that, a corporate experience that he was having, and asked if I would join him and our other mastermind partners in believing and seeing and visualizing and knowing that a certain thing would happen. And it did before the day was over. It was very important. I have here in my hand a copy of a document that was drawn up, and the date is May the 30th of this year. It was presented to me just a few days ago by one of my mastermind partners as a memento of recognition and of gratitude for the miracle demonstration that it represents. This is a $10 million piece of paper that I'm holding in my hand. It is more than a $10 million piece of paper. This paper represents an impossible task. I say impossible. There were those that believed that it was impossible, but it happened. My mastermind partner that gave it to me is sitting in this room tonight, and there are other people present who would testify of the validity of what I'm saying to you. Miracles are possible in the lives of an individual, the lives of a corporation, the life of a nation, but the most important life of all, of your own. If you're seated with me now at this moment or listening on cassette tape in any part of the world, I can tell you that it does not matter what the problem is, the solution exists. And if you will begin at once to establish a true mastermind alliance, if you go into action to create that group of like-minded persons around you, and if together you will adopt a definite purpose as an objective and share your objective with each other, you will be amazed at what will happen before you're halfway through. It's also important that you determine what appropriate benefit each member may receive in return for his or her cooperation in this alliance. Number 3, establish a definite place where you will be meeting, have a definite plan, so that when you come together, you will be meeting with frequency of contact and also with an understanding what it is that you're doing. Number 4, it's important that the leader of your group shoulder the responsibility of the group to see that harmony is maintained. You're coming together in a spirit of perfect harmony. And be sure that your watchword is definiteness of purpose, promptness of plan backed by continuous perfect harmony, meeting together regularly in a spirit of optimism and of excitement. The first step toward the successful mastermind alliance is to get on good terms with yourself. And by yourself, I mean your other self, your higher self, that more perfect self. Believing that within you is a plan that has already been formed. An intelligence that wants to bring that master plan into a living reality. And that within you is the power from on high to cause that plan to become a living reality. Napoleon Hill said, that which you think today becomes that which you are tomorrow. And man is mind. And evermore he takes the tools of thought and shaping what he wills brings forth 1,000 joys or 1,000 ills. I believe for you that it'll be 1,000 joys. You will think in secret, but it will come to pass. The world around you will change. It'll become the perfect reflection of your new state of mind. It will be your looking glass. That's the way it really is. The discussion that you have just heard is not intended to be the complete, in-depth understanding of the principle of the mastermind. It's intended that this lecture be listened to over and over again. You can gain true understanding of the principle by studying it in the lesson of the PMA Science of Success course entitled The Mastermind. This will allow you to recognize, relate, assimilate, and put the principles into action in your own life towards whatever goal that you are seeking. And may the mastermind bless you along the way.
This program is continued on the next cassette.